Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. After months of being absent from my review lineup, Beagle Scooby-Doo is back. You can hopefully look forward to a brand new review every single week until I finish the series. Starting with episode 9, which I skipped in order to review the related Christmas episode in time for Christmas last year, and moving on to episode 11. First, let's begin with episode 9, Vote Velma. As interesting a concept as Velma running for mayor is, I wasn't really into this episode. Normally, I'm a huge fan of most episodes of Beagle Scooby-Doo, though there have been small instances where I wasn't jazzed about certain jokes or elements. This is probably the first episode in an otherwise terrific show that I was just not a huge fan of. Now, despite that, I wouldn't say there's anything horribly bad about Vote Velma. As I said, one of the Scooby Gang running for a political position is a funny idea, but I don't feel the episode really made great use of that concept, or maybe politics in general bore me. The episode also didn't have any great jokes or gags going on, the closest thing being Scooby and Shaggy critiquing food as if it were high art. The monster, the ghost of Amos Littlefield's founder, just also didn't stick out very much either. And honestly, while the chase music was rockin', the chase scene itself was kinda boring. In fact, the only good thing that came from this episode was that chase music. It's just a rather bland, boring episode. Next up is episode 11, In Space. More like Dead Space, am I right? Because from the spooky abandoned space station to an alien infection running amok, this feels like a family-friendly version of the popular horror video game, Dead Space. Maybe I'm just seeing what I want to see though. There's tons of other space station horror stories besides Dead Space. I actually reviewed the Dead Space movie last Halloween. Either way, I love the episode. I just have this thing for the more spooky settings in the Scooby-Doo franchise, and the whole creepy space station setting is just aces in my mind. The Scooby Gang inexplicably end up going into space, that's actually part of two separate jokes made throughout the episode, and encounter what appear to be a dangerous alien life form that infects its victims, turning them into scary red skull monsters. The setup is great because suddenly the characters can't trust each other, and it leads to some hilarious situations and lines. My favorite bit being Scoob and Shag's distrust of Feigenbaum.
Where are they? Press up, Feigenbaum.
And there's also a very real moment when Fred and friends believe that Daphne has been infected. It doesn't get too heavy, but this is certainly one of a few instances in which the danger is very real. Heck, the characters are freaking launched out into space. If it weren't for Fred's decked out van, they'd actually be dead. It's incredibly intense, and I loved it. The villain this time around seems to be a reimagining of the Space Kook from Scooby-Doo Where Are You? What else could it possibly be? Sure, the cackle is gone. That would have been a great touch and would have increased the spook factor, writers. And his skull is red instead of, what, blue? But come on, it's Space Kook. Sadly, he doesn't even get a name in this episode. Might I suggest Red Space Kook? Or Red Kook? If Red Hulk can be a thing, then so can this. Another favorite part is when Scooby and Shaggy go into a wormhole and end up back in previous episodes. That was a really cool touch. I wonder if they retroactively changed the past. They certainly were the ones behind the red scroll at the beginning of the episode. Much like the characters say towards the end, maybe I'm thinking about this way too hard. And that about does it for my review of episodes 9 and 11. Which of these two did you like the most, and why? Share down below in the comments. And now I'd like to take the time to thank my patrons over on Patreon for supporting me. So, thank you to Yasmin, I really appreciate it. If you'd like to see how you can become a patron, get early access to videos, and get more of a say in what I cover on this channel, links to my Patreon will be down below. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. After a very relaxing one-week break, I'm all prepared to come back and give you what you want. More reviews. And Let's Plays. Now, because of said break, I wasn't able to review this special episode when it premiered, but that obviously couldn't be helped now. Then again, my review of Last Day of Summer was up weeks after it premiered, so at least I'm keeping with tradition. Either way, I'm very excited to discuss the final episode of Phineas and Ferb. I suppose it wouldn't really be the final episode, more like an extra episode, but I digress. The Alka Files is pretty much what it sounds like, a 1-hour special following Perry's new animal team, and Doof, as a mysterious foe from Monogram's past returns.
Hello! Francis Monogram!
Early on, we're introduced to this new team: Harry the Hyena, Karen the Cat, Maggie the Macaw, and of course, Doof. This was set up in the previous episode, the series finale, Last Day of Summer, which was actually one of the first episodes I ever reviewed here on Cartoon Hangout. Weirdly enough, we discover that Perry isn't exactly a team player, which kind of shocked me.
Agent P, nowhere in the OWCA training manual does it say abandon your team and apprehend the suspect by yourself. You're not a lone wolf anymore. Your team lacks focus and they need your leadership.
I suppose since he's worked alone for so long, he wouldn't be that great at leading a team, but it's still something I was amazed to see at first. On the other side of things, we're introduced to a new villain calling himself Professor Parenthesis. Not parenthesis, parenthesis. As soon as I saw him, I knew that if the show ever did come back, they could always use him as a recurring villain since Doof is now on the side of the Angels. I'll talk more about that later in the review. This episode also features the return of the Bug Trio from the episode Doof 101, who are now looking to join the OWCA.
Dust clears, and here we are, Alka Secret Headquarters.
Doesn't look very secret to me.
Be that as it may, today is the day that we will become Alka's first insect agent.
I'll admit that at first I was really digging their inclusion in this episode, but it got old very fast. Anytime it cut to them during the episode, I just really wanted them to skip it and take me back to the main action. It doesn't help that they never do get to join Alka, even by the episode's end. I feel like their side story would have been so much better if they were shown a little bit less, and often throughout the episode, and managed to not only save the day, as they actually did, but were rewarded for doing so. However, if this is the worst the episode could do, then you've still got a great special on your hands. I'm also going to admit that the reveal of who Professor Parenthesis was caught me completely by surprise, and then reminded me a little bit of Tough Puppy. After Perry attacks him and knocks his head off, we learn that he's actually a flea! A freaking flea, everybody! Throughout the episode, Monogram is constantly trying to think of who he went to school with, so it's hilarious that it was a flea, because of course no one would notice a flea. Oh, and side note, the bits of the episode following Carl and Monogram were much better than the Bug side story.
We're gonna have to do some creative sneaking, Carl. Follow my lead. The Cobra.
Although Parenthesis was caught in the end, I could totally see him coming back in potential further episodes if ever the need arises. Heck, instead of Phineas and Ferb returning as we know it, I'd love to see an OWCA spin-off show that follows Perry and Doofenshmirtz's team taking on new baddies every week.
It's the Alka Files!
Anyway, this was a fantastic episode. I thought it was only going to be 30 minutes, so it was great that it turned out to be an hour long. The animation was actually much improved over the regular episode, which I think has to do with it being like its own little movie. It was also good to see a little bit about what Doof working with the Alka would be like. The only thing I realized wasn't in the episode was Doofenshmirtz's daughter Vanessa, who, as it was revealed in Last Day of Summer, was accepted into Alka's internship program. So it was my assumption that she would have a role to play in the special, but nope, she's nowhere to be found. Then again, none of the other human characters outside of the OWCA really showed up in any significant role.
Are these new plates? I mean, they look the same, but it feels as though they were replaced by exact copies.
But, like I said, she had joined Alka, so kinda weird. What did you think of the episode? Does it make you even more sad over the show's ending? And like me, would you want to see an OWCA spin-off series? Let me know all of this in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the review, make sure to consider leaving a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. When a show advertises itself as Family Guy for women, that statement carries an equal amount of weight and baggage. What exactly does Family Guy but for women look like? Heck, I wasn't even aware Family Guy was only for men. I mean, sure, the name has guy in it, but the show focuses fairly equally on the rest of the cast, not just Peter. The baggage that comes from such a comparison is that if you fail, you look all the more ridiculous. Imagine if someone filmed a movie and called it Game of Thrones meets Frozen. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't, then you get laughed at. So where does Mother Up stand? What is Mother Up? Well, according to Wikipedia, the show chronicles the misguided attempts at parenthood of a disgraced music executive who transitioned from the big city to suburbia. After she resigns from her job and her husband leaves her, Rudy Wilson becomes a single mother raising her 2 children, Apple and Dick, and must learn mothering duties. Now, that doesn't sound too awful a plot, does it? It's rife with storytelling and comedy potential. I've only watched the first episode, but I was rather surprised. Surprised because I fully expected to be cringing and rolling my eyes throughout the entire thing. Instead, after getting past an incredibly rough opening, I warmed up to it a little. Initially, my thoughts were that the main character is far too unlikable to root for. She's an awful mother, she's very crude, and Ava Longoria's voice just kills me. But slowly the pieces come together, and it somehow works for what the series is trying to be. Whether this is like Family Guy and none of the progress continues into subsequent episodes is too early for me to tell. As for the comparisons to Family Guy, besides just being an adult comedy, I don't really see it. The comedy in the pilot isn't as wacky as in Family Guy, the characters are less cartoony, if that makes sense, and there are certainly no cutaways. It's just your standard adult comedy, that for some reason looks more like the Archie comics. The dynamic between the mother and her kids, Dick and Apple, is what probably sold me, especially after she tries to calm Apple down about swimming in a pool by telling her a more terrifying pool story to expected results. Rudy doesn't know how to be a mother, and that seems like where most of the humor will come from. That and her trying to climb the suburban mother social ladder. It's not laugh out loud funny like you might get out of the better Family Guy episodes, but it may get you to crack a smile or chuckle softly. Now, I don't know if the show gets worse or becomes an underrated gem canceled long before its time. I don't have plans to review it weekly like I may have done in the past, but if there's enough interest, I wouldn't say no to watching the remaining episodes at some point in the future and doing a final review. If you're interested in watching this pilot, you can probably find it on any number of websites that host cartoons. It may even still be up on Hulu. So yeah, I'd at least recommend checking out the pilot to see if you want to watch more. And thanks for watching my review. This is coming out on a Sunday, but generally one-off reviews like this will be on Saturday from now on. And if you're interested in more content like this, consider subscribing to my channel. Oh, and if you'd be so kind, also consider checking out my Patreon where you can support more content like this, especially as YouTube cracks down on non-advertiser friendly videos. Again, thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Know what time it is? It's time once again for me to review the cartoon prequel to a movie series I've never seen. I wanted to see the 2 Hotel Transylvania movies before I reviewed this show, but you know me and my next level procrastination skills. But of course, a good cartoon, prequel or not, should probably be able to stand on its own without prior knowledge of its movie. I think Hotel Transylvania the series does that okay. Like I said, it's a prequel to the 2 movies, likely done because they don't want to deal with continuity when it comes to the upcoming 3rd movie. So, what do but go backwards? The plot is pretty basic as far as plots go. Mavis's father Dracula's gone away and left her basically in charge. Well, really he left his sister Lydia in charge. And the shenanigans ensue from there. Coming from a place where I literally don't know any of these characters, I admit to being a little lost at first, but once I realized that most, if not all, of the main characters in these episodes are new, you're good. You probably get more out of them if you've seen the movies and maybe make the connection that they're the kids you didn't know some of the movie monsters actually had. The first half of the episode, Enter the Nose Picker, is as close to an introduction as you can get with these types of shows, starting off with a band of skeleton mariachis explaining the plot of the series, but then it quickly skips an unknown amount of time ahead instead of allowing us to see what the first day of Lydia being in charge was like. Which is fine, because we do get a good idea of how strict she is by episode's end. It's a rather serviceable story about Mavis needing to keep the hotel tidy for some hotel reviewer who was coming. I'm just a little disappointed they went with such a common story for their first episode. Other than the grading system being skulls and not stars, it could have happened in any other show. But it was fairly funny too, so it wasn't all bad. The latter half of the episode is Hide and Shriek and involves Mavis and friends being tormented by a ghost doll. The doll itself is very creepy thanks to its design and mannerisms, and is one element that I hope to see more of. Hotel Transylvania seems to have these horror elements, obviously toned down, that I'd love to see get featured more. I love comedic, macabre shows, and if this show can deliver on that with weird little creations like a ghost doll, I'm game. This one also gives us a little more time with the side characters like Hank and whoever the two other friends are. Still not sure I like these characters or not. I'd almost prefer it be Mavis only, but I guess I need someone for her to interact with. Now, having seen this first episode, divided into Enter the Nose Picker and Hide and Shriek, it's a little hard to nail down whether this show will be good or not. There's plenty of macabre comedy and just regular old comedy, and the characters all seem fun, but I may need to see more to really form an opinion on it. Luckily, I will probably be reviewing this weekly until such a time as I get bored with it. Otherwise, I think these two episodes were pretty good. From what little I've seen of the movies, the comedy seems in line with it, but fans will have to let me know about that one. The one problem is that the episode seems to go by really quickly. Nose Picker is resolved way too fast, but Hide and Shriek felt like it went on for a decent amount of time and was resolved well. But what else can I say? Other than I really do love the animation style. It's got this cute charm to it, especially with Mavis's character model. Something else to note is that, like with other movies that transition into TV shows, the cast has been entirely swapped out. Given that I never saw the movies, I can't really compare them, but I do like most of the voice actors they went with, except for Hank. I feel like he's got too high a voice for a Frankenstein monster. Man, I feel like I really haven't said much about this show in this video, but honestly, I mean, what else can I say? It's funny, it looks good, and I think if you're already a fan of the movies, you'll like it. Although I probably wouldn't look for any of the more serious moments that were probably found in the movies in this show. Even a character's line about eating a toddler included the character immediately admitting that they just scolded a child. So, not going to be as macabre as other similar shows. So, yeah, what did you think of Hotel Transylvania, the series? Does it hold up to the movies, or do you think it's just a cheap cash-in? Let me know down below. To watch this episode, you can watch it officially on Disney Channel's apps, YouTube channel, and soon television. While you're still here, make sure to check out my merch store and Patreon if you'd like to support my channel. Thanks for watching, and take care. Happy Halloween, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Normally, one doesn't first think of horror when it comes to cartoons. You might think about laughs, hijinks, or talking animals. But horror? No, that couldn't possibly be right. Well, you'd be wrong. Because whether intentional or not, many cartoons have had moments that just absolutely scarred us as young children. From those freaking puppets on the Mr. Meat show to basically every episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog, the cartoon industry has been freaking us out for decades. And here is just a few examples, ones that definitely gave me the willies all those years ago. Number 5. Return the Slab from Courage the Cowardly Dog. It's not a scariest moments in cartoons video without this chilling scene from Courage. This is by far the episode that fans of animation will first point to if you ask them to name something that scared them in a cartoon. I don't think it was the freaky appearance of Ramses here that earned its way into many children's nightmares. No, I'd reckon it's that quiet but eerie voice of his that sent us diving under our blankets.
Return the slab.
What?
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
Number 4. The giant baby from Rugrats. This one is definitely one of the scenes from a cartoon that freaked me out the most as a kid. I haven't met anyone else who felt the same, but maybe you will after seeing this gruff-sounding, huge baby chasing down Angelica and presumably trying to eat her in what I can only imagine is the children's equivalent of a slasher movie. Number 3. Scary Godparents from The Fairly OddParents. Since the dawn of mankind, humans have feared what's in the dark. Our imaginations have played tricks on us, and sounds that, during the daytime, are innocent, take on a much more sinister connotation at night. Is that just a shadow, or is someone watching me? Is someone following me, or is that just an animal? Nothing is worse than the fear of what we can't see. Maybe that's why this episode from The Fairly OddParents, a relatively innocent show, freaked me out so bad when I first watched it. Timmy wishes for it to be dark for 12 hours, despite Wanda warning him of a legend that states that if fairies go more than 8 hours without sunlight, they turn into fanged beasts who devour their godchild. The initial reveal of them turning into monsters is really creepy, their voices having changed to be more sinister. All the while, Timmy must evade their pursuit in the pitch black. And each time his fairies show up, their appearance is a little more monstrous than the last, leading us to their final transformation. Literal nightmare fuel. Don't watch this episode in the dark. Number 2. The zombies from Scooby-Doo Zombie Island. While Scooby has always dabbled with monsters, usually men in masks, Zombie Island was one of the few times a threat was real, and really scary. I rewatched this movie constantly as a kid, but that didn't stop me from being afraid of the zombies in the movie, especially when they first emerged from the ground. Their rotting skin and the spooky atmosphere of the swamp added up to a very scary experience to a young kid. It truly was terror time again. And number 1, Jekyll's transformation in The Pagemaster. This is one of those immensely underrated films, having been a box office bomb that everyone needs to watch at least once. It stars Macaulay Culkin as Richard Tyler, who visits a library and finds himself sucked into the pages of his books. That's where the cartoon element pops up, don't worry. The movie is marketed as an action fantasy, and much of the movie matches that tone. Except for this moment, that is by far the most horrifying moment in any cartoon I have ever seen.
Dr. Jekyll? Dr. J?
My name is Mr. Hyde!
Have fun sleeping after that. Anyway, these are some of the scariest moments in cartoons that I can remember from when I was just a kid. I'm sure I could think up some more, but I really wanted to focus in on the ones I could remember being scared by. You probably have your own list, and I would love to hear what you consider some of cartoons' scariest moments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.
It's Cartoon Hangout, whoa, with Archaic King as your host. It's time to review some great cartoons, from Craig of the Creek to Scooby-Doo. Hello, lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon.
Good night, My Little Pony.
He said it! He said it!
Hello, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. So, the new My Little Pony movie dropped on Netflix a few days ago. I wasn't planning on watching it or reviewing it at first, but here we are. A thing to note is that while I'm not much of a brony, I am familiar with the franchise, at least as far as the previous generation goes, since I did watch a fair bit of it back in the day. It's pretty good, and so my expectations for the new MLP movie were fairly high. And personally, I feel like those expectations were met, if not exceeded, in certain ways. Story-wise, enough time has passed from the events of Friendship is Magic that all ponies are divided and no longer friends. In the movie, this never gets explained, but it seemingly happened so long ago no one remembers even being friends in the first place. So instead of that being the plot point, the movie focuses on the character Sunny going on an adventure to prove that Earth ponies, unicorns, and Pegasus can be friends again. In terms of scope, it's actually fairly small. There's no grand journey or evil forces to overcome. It's about friendship and love, which can sound a bit corny, but I think the film pulls it off. Admittedly, I even teared up a few times throughout the movie, though that could always be due to the music pulling on my heartstrings. But yeah, that focus on something more personal, I think, is handled pretty well, but then My Little Pony usually has a handle on that. Every character, in my opinion, is well written, and they shine in their own way. Sunny, in particular, is a magnificent successor to Twilight Sparkle. I started off not quite liking her as much, what with the way she flaunts authority, even if she means well, but she grew on me quickly, along with the other cast of characters like Izzy, Zip, and Hitch. Izzy definitely has shades of Pinkie Pie, and I think there could have been a real chance at her character being really annoying, but she never crosses that line into that archetype. While writing this, I did see some criticisms about the movie's pacing, which I do kind of agree with. Sunny and Izzy canter off on their adventure rather quickly towards the beginning of the movie, but I didn't really feel like the rest of the movie was weirdly paced. I mean, for me, the writing of the movie was top tier. The messages were strong and clear, but never too obnoxious, even when you know what recent events they're referencing. The characters also never felt flat or boring, with only the weakest character maybe being Sprout as a whiny mama's boy. And even then, he could be fun to watch as his paranoid pony whipping everyone up into a frenzy. Plus, his song, Danger Danger, was pretty cool. Speaking of music, as hard as it is to believe, I was never a big fan of the music in My Little Pony. That's not to say I hated it, per se. I did like various songs throughout the series. But as I've grown up, I've become less into the break-into-song trope in films and shows. I'd rather just get to the story. But this film's music is actually pretty good. I can see myself re-listening to songs like Danger Danger or Fit Right In. And the rap part in that latter one really took me by surprise. Not in a bad way, kind of like in a good way. But if I did have to have one complaint about the movie, it'd be Sophia Carson's song.
We got the light, we're coming in stronger, we're in it together.
It sounds overly produced, not necessarily auto-tuned, just way too produced, if that even makes sense. And lastly, the animation. I have no complaints. It's a pretty movie. The CGI doesn't feel out of place, though I know there are fans who are going to miss the traditional look of the previous generation. And a brief look at what another 2D movie could have looked like as the movie's intro certainly looks incredible. Now, if only all 2D movies could look that good. I think if you're looking for a feel-good movie, or you're just a fan of My Little Pony in general, you should give this one a shot. It's not like you gotta pay to see it either, so you're not wasting your money. It's on Netflix right now. I'm personally happy I saw it, and I hope this little review of mine conveyed that well enough. I sometimes have difficulty reviewing movies and getting my thoughts across. Ironic, I know. I'm also looking forward to the show that is supposed to follow after this. I don't know if I'm going to review it, though. It depends on how bad Hasbro comes down on me for using footage of their movie for my review, or if I don't already have a show to review at that time. Anyways, that's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. Consider subscribing for more cartoon reviews. You're also able to catch videos like this one early by at least a week if you join my YouTube membership. Links will be available in the description below. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. So, I just finished watching Mysticon's first episode, Sisters in Arms, the latest series from Nickelodeon about 4 girls who one day become the titular Mysticons. I first learned about this series back when it was still a cartoon for boys, and I could even find the promo image that still reflected that. But of course they scrapped it so they could chase the girl demographic. I've been excited about the show since then, and am a little disappointed by its premiere episode. mostly from a visual standpoint. While the overall art style chosen is great, the actual act of animating it and the horrendous CGI backdrops and cars is god awful. I have no clue why the cartoon industry still can't put out quality CGI. When it comes to the movies, we're great, but somehow we've only made tiny improvements since the days of reboot in the realm of television. And honestly, it's inexcusable given how good fellow Nick Cartoon Miraculous Ladybug looks with its CGI. Moving on, there's the matter of the characters. Some of them aren't much better than the visuals, as the show introduces us to characters like Piper and Zarya, the former of which spouts off terrible lines such as "meanie pants," and essentially is the Pinkie Pie of the show if Pinkie Pie was written terribly out of place. While the other drops lines like "later haters" without an inch of irony. The show makes it super apparent that, despite being thieves, these two girls help the poor children of the city. Obviously done to excuse their behavior or explain it, but the show kind of drops the ball by making them both still incredibly irritating. I find it hard to relate or feel bad for these characters when they act horrible and protest at being called thieves. You can steal from the rich to feed the poor all you want, but that's still stealing. You're thieves. In the early scenes of the episode, Zarya copies a key with some fairly advanced tech, seemingly not uncommon in this weird futuristic fantasy world the show inhabits, but then proceeds to use it to open a ship's door. Why? You have advanced technology in this world. Your cars actually fly, but somehow a ship uses things like old-timey keys and keyholes. I'm sorry if this is a minor detail, but I could not for the life of me accept it. By the time we move on to the princess and her story, we're about 11 minutes in. We managed to go that long before we get the expected line about double standards. So that's something. Next episode, we'll get a lesson about the patriarchy, I'm positive. Probably one of the better written scenes in this episode was when Arcana, the princess, watches her parents get turned to stone. It's a bit of an emotional moment, and it adds some stakes and weight to the show beyond protecting some artifact from some dead dudes. Hopefully this doesn't get immediately dropped in later episodes just so that the series can be fun and positive again. Oh, and another thing I liked about the show was that the girls don't instantly get along with each other. That's probably one of the better things about two of them being peasant thieves. There's this clash between the rich and the poor here, and it's fairly entertaining. I'd be a little miffed if the girls teamed up and girl power suddenly made them besties. The show is for young girls after all, but there's a good lesson to be had about learning that not everyone will be friends. Now, I'm still not sold on this series after watching this first episode. Some of the characters grate on my nerves, and considering this is actually meant to be an action series, but for girls, the animation is bad, with only a few moments that stand out as competent. However, there is a decent show somewhere under all that, and I'll be excited to see what kind of stories Mysticons will tell. Will it live up to other female action series like Kim Possible or Miraculous Ladybug? Or will it crash and burn? Who knows? Did you catch the premiere of Mysticons? What did you think of it? Let me know down below and tell me who your favorite character is. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon, and for the month of January, also your place for all things Scooby-Doo. We've been off to a rather rough start with the new Scooby-Doo movie, so let's see how episode 3, Wednesday is Missing, cuts it. It's light years ahead of the previous 2 episodes actually. It's the best episode so far, and honestly, could have been the perfect first episode, way better than the Three Stooges. Episode 3 just has that spooky atmosphere and the monsters you'd expect from the series, so it kind of makes sense. And it involves one of the creepiest, no, kookiest families around, the Addams Family. Now, I'm a big fan of these characters. I grew up with the cartoons and the underrated live-action versions, so I will admit a little bias in seeing them interact with my other favorite set of characters, the Scooby Gang. As is typical for them, the characters get into some car trouble. They should really get a new vehicle. and through some misunderstandings here and there, end up becoming the new caretakers of the Addams house, complete with every creepy thing inside it. This premise is far more interesting to me than episodes 1 or 2, as it allows for the characters to sort of explore and deal with the Addams family and their weird house. It fits in with the general concept of Scooby-Doo 2, whereas the first 2 episodes didn't quite feel the same. Wednesday's kidnapping is the catalyst for the Scooby Gang searching the house top to bottom. It leads them through her pet corner, Pugsley's experiment room complete with postman turned bird, and a few other intriguing places. That plot is almost unnecessary, as the characters could have naturally explored the house, but it does provide a bit of reason for it. And it is amusing that Wednesday wasn't even in any real danger. She's content to just use her spider as a yo-yo until someone finds her. The villains of the episodes are the neighbors, who somehow managed to build a helicopter shaped like a vulture, despite how nonsensical that really is. I suppose this is somewhat the weakest part to the episode, but it still manages to be fun in parts. The real highlight of the episode is just the Addams themselves, especially Gomez and his wife Morticia. They're fun to watch, and the gang's interactions with them are hysterical. I wasn't a big fan of how the episode wrapped up, but it's not a bad ending. I just wouldn't think the Addams family were the best people to have kids around. Still, it's just a cartoon version of them. Even Wednesday is less murdery than she normally is. This episode was a lot of fun to watch. It was a very entertaining crossover, though it makes you realize the Mystery Inc. has met real supernatural creatures and still doesn't believe in them in other episodes. Weird. Before I forget to mention it, there's just one moment in the episode that floored me. It's one of Scooby-Doo's facial animations, and it's just... here, watch.
Still no sign of Wednesday. Let's face it, gang, we're up against a dead end. Dead end?
It's incredibly better than any of the animation in the episode. It stands in stark contrast to it, and I don't understand why. Why did the animators put so much effort into that one moment, and then never do anything else that high quality again? It looks like something out of a Disney cartoon or something. That's how nice it looked. Did some dude go into work one day and he just said, "Screw it, I'm gonna make this facial animation look groovy"? Any animators out there, chime in with any thoughts or insight you have on this. I'm dying to know more about it. Anyway, that's it from me. Let me know what you think of this episode in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and take care.
Nobody in here.
Just us official family skeletons.
Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Night of the Living Dead Darkest Dawn is a 2015 CGI modern reimagining of the classic zombie movie, Night of the Living Dead. And it is awful. Simply one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It came out 2 years ago, but looks like some PlayStation 1 video game cutscene from 20 years ago. Every single character in this dreadful excuse of a movie looks like they took a picture of some poor actor's face and stretched it over a 3D model. In the case of the main character Ben, it looks even worse. They can't even get his freaking lips to move in a realistic way. Seriously, take a look. What the heck? They had a large enough crew working on this, but everything about it is amateurish, which is unforgivable by 2015 standards. You know what other movies came out in 2015? Inside Out, Hotel Transylvania 2, The Peanut Movie, and so on. The voice dubbing is atrocious, and you can barely hear some of the characters, and at other times the recording itself sounds like it was captured on some cheap-ass mic. It doesn't help that the music in this movie and the garbage editing made me want to scratch my eyes out. Don't believe me? This is fairly early into the film. I had a headache just trying to follow that. Not to mention that little red effect pissed me off so bad. Can you say not subtle? Because it was horrible. anytime something scary happened or even dramatic, boom, red. I don't know if they were trying to pay homage to the original black and white, but randomly in the movie, it will also change to black and white, only a few seconds at a time and then back to color, making me puzzled at the reason for it, other than the filmmakers maybe thinking it made the movie a little bit more artsy, which it does not. On top of those two things, there was this weird effect. I don't know what it's called, but it was annoying. Now the animation isn't any better. They used motion capture, but if so, the actors have no experience acting like real humans because it was stilted and odd, but that possibly has to do more with the CGI than anything. The zombies were okay looking, but obviously abandoned the more human appearance seen in the original, going for a more modern depiction, along with the zombies moving quicker. Unfortunately, they never sound scary, them ripping into humans is comically bad, and because of the low budget, there's never any actual tension involving them because the entire city looks abandoned despite the zombie apocalypse having just started. Now the story doesn't fare great either. It's essentially the original but with some slight tweaks. I could go along with the more modern city setting, but other changes almost completely crap on the original, from turning the lead into a doofus who manages to get them all killed, to actually making the father in the movie even more unlikable than the original one. Even if any of you want to defend the story with, it's just doing something different, the movie never does anything remotely on par or better than what you'll find in the original, which makes this a completely pointless movie that no one was looking for. There are plenty of other, better reimaginings and adaptations of Night of the Living Dead out there. You're better off watching the classic, rather than this brain-dead corpse of a movie. That'll be it for this review. If you were unlucky enough to have seen this movie like I was, and have some opinions of your own, feel free to leave them down below. Otherwise, consider this review a warning, and avoid this movie at all cost. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout Reanimated, your place for all things cartoon. Ever since Marvel confirmed that there would be a Marvel Zombies episode in their anthology series What If, I've been excited to review it. Heck, it's the only episode I even wanted to watch, and I'm probably not going to check out any of the other ones. I love zombie horror, and fans have always talked about what an MCU version of the comic book Marvel Zombies would look like. And while we don't get a full movie, it's probably too R-rated for someone like Marvel, we do at least get an episode based on the popular comic book. The plot of the episode starts from the part of Infinity War where Hulk comes home to warn Thanos, but deviates in that the world has been zombified while he was away. From there, Banner encounters zombie heroes and various survivors on the hunt for a cure and to survive. The explanation for the virus is a bit different from the comics, which was, complicated, to say the least. In the episode, it's explained away as a quantum virus. I read some reviews that had an issue with this simplistic and relatively unexplained reason, but I don't think its origins are that important, at least for a 30-minute episode. Now, what I did have a problem with, as shared by others, was the inconsistent tone. Zombie fiction is by no means restricted to a serious tone, and can be comedic as well. But this episode didn't balance the seriousness of Earth's heroes being zombies and the jokes the characters cracked. Many times I was left puzzled at how the characters were reacting to dire moments with one-liners. Not only did they seem to joke around while killing former humans, but they also easily brushed off killing their former friends.
That was your friend. Sorry about that.
I should be sad, but I'm not.
Spider-Man and Scott Lang cracking jokes make sense, but even then, some of their humor felt off and insulting considering the events surrounding them. Even Bucky doesn't seem to care about killing Sam or Captain America, and they were both his friends. I'm not saying the episode needed to be grim all the way through, but I think they needed to rein some of the jokes in. Other than that complaint, the rest of the episode was pretty decent. This is my first time seeing the animation for the show in action, and it seemed alright. It's nothing to write home about, but nothing terrible either. I'm also glad they went with some gore, or at least some gruesome deaths, because this is Marvel Zombies after all. You can't have one without the other. Also, I want to go back to the writing for just a moment, but I did like the bits, the scenes with Parker and Hope, especially towards the end. Sometimes the writing in the episode really shined when it stopped to get serious. The ending really makes me want to see a part 2, but I'm not sure what else could be done, really. Spoilers, but most of the planet, or at least the heroes, are dead. Unless the ones off-world show up, how do they expect to defeat Thanos now? Maybe the writers could come up with something? I don't know. With that said, that'll be it from me on What If's zombie episode. Despite the inconsistency in tone throughout the episode, I did still find it enjoyable to watch, and I would definitely recommend it for any MCU fan to check out. It's likely as close to horror as you're going to get out of Marvel. If you'd like to see videos like this one early, consider becoming a member. Links below. Thanks for watching and take care. Hello, lords and ladies. I recently finished watching episode 6 of Marvel's Spider-Man, Sandman, which obviously featured the Sand villain himself, but surprisingly the real antagonist of the episode was his daughter, Kimia, aka Sandgirl. She's voiced by Sophia Carson of Descendants fame. The episode sees her fall prey to the sand and toxic waste that would transform her father into the Sandman, giving her similar abilities as well. For those not familiar with the Spider-Man mythos, she might seem like a brand new character created solely for the purpose of this cartoon, but she isn't. Kimia Alvarado made her first appearance in the Amazing Spider-Man issues 615 and 616, part of the Gauntlet storyline going on at the time. Like the episode, she's the daughter of Flint Marko and Alma in the comics, though I don't think her mother is ever brought up in the show to my knowledge. Unlike the show, there's still a question mark hanging over Flint being her actual dad or not. See, Alma liked to have some fun with various criminals. In the comics, Flint takes his daughter away, promising her a kingdom of her very own. Unbeknownst to Sandman, who had learned to split his mind into various copies, he'd also killed her mom. Kimia isn't aware of any of that and happily lives with her dad. By the 2-issue arc's end, she would end up in Child Protective Services and live with a bad foster family. Marko would later devise other plans to get custody of his daughter, including joining the Sinister Six again for a paycheck to the sound of $2 billion. There really isn't much else to be said about Kimia within the comics. She was introduced in a fairly short story arc, and then subsequently played little to no role besides an unseen motivation for Flint going forward. Because she's pretty young in the comics, there aren't very many similarities between cartoon her and the comics. At this point in time, she loves her dad very much, and knows she's meant to be a little princess. Honestly, she's stupidly adorable in the comics, especially with how she refers to Spider-Man as Mr. Man. Maybe with her now joining Marvel's Spider-Man, she'll appear again in the comics. Maybe even aged up, because the way kids age in comics is so inconsistent, it's crazy. Like, sometimes they'll age up and then de-age. It's just a clusterfuck. But hopefully this little video of mine was at least somewhat informative as to Kimia's origins and will motivate you to go out and pick those 2 issues up. Story-wise, it's a decent arc, though the art itself is nothing to write home about. And that's been the video. If you'd like me to do more videos like this, explaining the comic book origins of the characters in the cartoon, let me know below. Thanks for watching, and take care.